You got them for kings and queens. And, well, we're in Joshua, so they don't have any of those yet. But so Joshua's divided all the land up. If you know what, I'll throw this up here before we dive in. So if you're not familiar with all the different tribes, here's a map that helps show some of this. So you've got Judah down in the south, and Dan along with it. Benjamin, son of my right hand. They're around Jerusalem. So working our way up, we have Ephraim, we have Manasseh, we have Zebulun, we have Issachar, we have Naphtali, we have Asher, and then another section of Dan up here in the north. And then jumping across the Jordan River and working our way down, we have Manasseh again. So Manasseh had two portions, Gad, Reuben, on the east side of the Jordan. And if you were to pull this map up, you could see the section we're going to talk about next is the cities that the Levites have. So they don't get land as the priestly class. They are not intended to have possession of the land. They're intended to serve God. However, they need to be able to provide for their families. So they get cities and they get surrounding land to grow their crops on. So there is some things there with that. And yeah, like I said, this isn't the best map, but it was I thought a good map to be able to show some of the things as we were going along through Joshua. So let's jump in. We've got 4 chapters, and we'll be done with the book of Joshua. So questions along the way, just throw those in the chat. And if there's other things that my brain makes connections or important background information to connect with it, I'll just throw that in there. So let's see where we are today and finish up Joshua. Now the family heads of the Levites approached Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the heads of the other tribal families of Israel at Shiloh in Canaan, and said to them, "The Lord commanded through Moses that you give us towns to live in with pasture lands for our livestock." So as the Lord had commanded, the Israelites gave the Levites the following towns and pasture lands out of their own inheritance. The first lot came out from Korathites, according to their clan. The Levites, who were descendants of Aaron the priest, were allotted 13 towns from the tribes of Judah, Simeon, and Benjamin. The rest of the Korahites' descendants were allotted 10 towns from the clans of the tribes of Ephraim, Dan, and half of Manasseh. Okay, so if you're not familiar with casting lots, one of the easiest ways to kind of think of this is some kind of system of like throwing dice. There's different thoughts at different times in history of what they might have used. They may have actually used, knuckle bones is one thought, but there would have been a system of markings on there, and you would throw these to determine who would get it. So it wasn't intended to be chance, which you would think dice throwing might be, but it was intended to allow for God, or in the case of the Israelites, or in the case of Jonah, when they're doing it for him, or when soldiers are doing it for Jesus' possessions, it would be letting the gods determine the outcome. So it's taking all of human interference out of the way and letting God decide, or the gods deciding, depending upon who was throwing them. So they're doing this so that there is no preferential treatment. There's no in anything of people saying, "Oh, you showed favoritism." No, all of that is out of the way. No bribery can happen. It all happens out of the hands of humans. That's the idea behind casting lots. So the first lot comes, and then they take that person out, and then they go to the second lot, and on and on and on. And then according to their clans is the size of their clan as how the land was given. So if you had a clan of 100,000 people, you would get a proportion to your people. If you only had 10,000 people, you got a smaller land. So that's where Manasseh was large and got 2 sections. We've got a scripture passage here put in the chat about casting lots. So Proverbs 16:33, the lot is cast into the lap, but every decision is from the Lord. Yeah, exactly. So that's the idea, is that it's taken out of the hands of humans. and God determines it. Okay, so continuing, the descendants of Gershon were allotted 13 towns from the clans of the tribes of Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, and the half tribe of Manasseh in Bashan. The descendants of Merari, according to their clans, received 12 towns from the tribe of Reuben, Gad, and Zebulun. I like that name, Zebulun. So the Israelites allotted to the Levites these towns and their pasture lands as the Lord had commanded through Moses. From the tribes of Judah and Simeon, they allotted the following towns by name. These towns were assigned to the descendants of Aaron, who were from the Korathites clan of the Levites, because the first lot fell to them. Okay, so we have the order that's given. Now we're going to have the specifics given. So they gave them Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, with its surrounding pasture land in the hill country of Judah. Arba was the forefather of Anak. Why did I say Achan? But the fields and the villages around the city they had given to Caleb, son of Jephunneh, as his possession. So to the descendants of Aaron the priest they gave Hebron, a city of refuge for one accused of murder, Libnah, Jidderah, Eshtemoa, Holon, Dibber, Ain, Jutah, and Beth Shemesh, together with their pasture lands, 9 towns from these two tribes. Okay, if you're not familiar with a city of refuge, if a person killed someone accidentally before vengeance, because it wasn't always justice, before vengeance could be served upon them and they were killed in retribution for the person they accidentally killed, they could flee to one of these cities, find protection, have a trial, have all the evidence come out, and then if found innocent of intentionally murdering someone, but instead accidentally killing someone, they were able to live freely in that city for a period of time, and there's more things to go along with that. So that's the city of refuge idea, is a place for people who accidentally commit a capital offense are able to flee to. And from the tribe of Benjamin, they gave them Gibeon, Geba, Anathoth, and Almon, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. Another thing that they do here from time to time is they name all the towns and then they tally the towns. And I think that's to make sure there's no discrepancy. If you ever read through legal documents, there's all kinds of repetition and rewording things and saying stuff so that you make sure that there's no confusion about things. So you couldn't later go, Gibeon Geba is one town, and because Geba is not anymore, so it's Gibeon Geba, and so you only get one, you don't get both. You can't do any kind of shenanigans like that later on. The total number of towns for the priests, the descendants of Aaron, came to 13 together with their pasture lands. The rest of Korathite clans of the Levites were allotted towns from the tribe of Ephraim, in the hill country of Ephraim. They were given Shechem, a city of refuge for one accused of murder, and Gezer, Gib-Zaim, and Beth Horon, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. Also from the tribe of Dan, they received Eltekeh, Gibbethon, Aijalon, and Gath-Rimmon, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns. From the half tribe of Manasseh, they received Tanakh and Gath-Rimmon, together with their pasture lands, 2 towns. Okay, I'm just noticing something. If you didn't catch this, there are 2 Gath-Rimmon here. So there is Gath-Rimmon in the tribe of Dan, and there's Gath-Rimmon in the time of Manasseh. That might all of a sudden seem strange. However, there are lots of places where you travel from one place to another and you run into the same town names over and over again. People move from one place to another. They take the town name with them when they start a new town. So, and you know what? I'm going to go look that up and see if we can find what the meaning is. So we are verse 24. All right, so 21, 24. And I'm just over here in Blue Letter Bible. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Now, this gives you little tools to, like, here's all the Hebrew, and then I can look it up there. So, dun, 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 4 cities. Here we go. So when I like doing this with names, I would do this, but it takes a long time to do it all the way through. Hey, Thomas, Jeff is alive and well. Thanks for the follow, friend. Thanks for being here. So Goth Rimmon is wine press of the pomegranate. So that's probably one reason why there's 2 cities named that. There's more than one wine press for pomegranate. So pomegranate wine. Interesting. So what I like doing that as I read through names. Names sometimes become boring to us. Just a whole list of names of places we've never been, never seen, or names of people that we've never heard of. But I go over here, I can look it up and find each name as we go along. So, so just in the chat. Yeah, like all the names in the UK names that are also towns in the USA. Yeah, and I also oh, hang on a second. I'm getting a warning on my battery. I'm going to have to move my screen and plug in. So, sorry about that. But yeah, I say I like when I travel, for instance, to notice through the United States how many towns have the name Paris, London, Cuba, Mexico. I love posting those different towns as I go along. So, Wasabi Cheetah, thanks for the follow, friend. Thanks for being in here. So yeah, we in the U.S. steal towns. We not only steal them from the U.K., we also steal them from other places around the world. There are Berlin. There is, well, maybe not Amsterdam. I don't know that, but there are other Dutch names around the area I live because Dutch settled and they brought their names. So there's Holland and Zeeland and Overijssel and other names. Yeah, Frankfurt. Yep. I bet there's a couple places I could go around in Pennsylvania that are going to have some German names. So, yeah, so that's neat. So, many Bible verses have some explanation of names, but not for all places. Yeah, they do that from time to time when it's something important, but or when they're writing and they're intentionally writing to people who would not have been Jewish and wouldn't have known the meaning of the names behind it. So sometimes a name will catch me for some reason. Here it was repeated twice. I wanted to go look it up. If I had time, I could go look up all of them. That takes a lot of time, but it is a good way to break up when you're reading genealogies and you're reading through 15 different names you've never heard or read, is to go look at what the meaning of them is. So, all right, so let's keep going. We're in verse 26. All these 10 towns and their pasture lands were given to the rest of the Korathite clans, Levite clans. The Goshenites were given from the half tribe of Manasseh. Golan in Bashan, a city of refuge for one accused of murder, and Be Ashtaroth, together with their pasture lands, 2 towns. I'm going to guess here, I'm not going to go look it up, but Ashtaroth is a foreign god, so you'll have names changed later on probably for some of those towns. From the tribe of Issachar, Kishion, Debaroth, Jarmuth, and En Ganim. together with their pasture lands, 4 towns from the tribe of Asher: Mishal, Abdon, Helkath, and Rehob, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns from the tribe of Naphtali. Kadesh in Galilee, a city of refuge for one accused of murder. Hamath, Dor, and Kartan, together with their pasture lands, 3 towns. Okay, just one thing, and notice they're continuing to say, if a city is a city of refuge. Why would that be important? So that people know later on what cities were the cities of refuge or intended to be cities of refuge, so that they, if ever in a circumstance, would know where they could go, or if they knew someone else who was in a circumstance who needed to flee, where they could direct them. Because one of the things, people don't always do what they're instructed to do, and we'll see that going through that. They're instructed to not harvest and to not till the land every 7 years and to let the land rest. They don't do that. So having all this stuff written out so that you can correct things later on is also important. So if a city decided to say, we should be doing this, they have here authorization to return to what they should have done. Yeah, people don't always do what they're instructed. Understatement of the year. Well, hey, understatement of the year, and we're only into the 2nd month, so we're good for the year. All right, the total number of towns of the Gershonite clans came to 13, together with their pasture lands. Merarite clans, the rest of the Levites were given from the tribe of Zebulun: Jokneam, Karta, Dimnah, and Nahala. That almost sounds like it's Hawaiian on some level. Lahalala. Together with their pasture lands, 4 towns from the tribe of Reuben: Bezer, Jahaz, Kedemoth, and Mephaath. Together with their pasture lands, 4 towns from the tribe of Gad: Ramoth and Gilead, a city of refuge from one accused of murder; Mahanaim, Heshbon, and Jarez, together with their pasture lands, 4 towns in all. The total number of towns allotted to the Merarite clan, who were the rest of the Levites, came to 12. The towns of the Levites in the territory held by the Israelites were 48 in all, together with their pasture lands. Each of these towns had pasture lands surrounding it. This was true for all these towns. So the Lord gave Israel all the land he had sworn to give their ancestors, and they took possession of it and settled there. The Lord gave them rest on every side, just as he had sworn to their ancestors. Not one of their enemies withstood them. The Lord gave all their enemies into their hands. Not one of all the Lord's good promises to Israel failed. Every one was fulfilled. Okay, I'm going to stop and look at that for a minute. Here's one of those phrases and things that happen that, so we have a description of here making a declaration that everything was fulfilled that was promised. If you were with us earlier this week or last week, we've been reading in Genesis, and Abram, who just got his name changed to Abraham yesterday in our reading, has had God promise him the land, and he had to walk through the land, and he has descriptions of the land, and your descendants will have the land. And here is a declaration saying everything promised all the way back to Abraham was fulfilled. Every one was fulfilled. Now we're in the middle of Abram getting told he's going to get the land, and he's waiting, and then he waited 10 years, and it hasn't happened. And so he goes and he has a son by his slave, and then they wait again, and until now, son hasn't been born, but Sarah is pregnant and promised that a year from now, when they return, they'll have a son. And he's 99, and he's going to be turning 100. So all of that stuff that was promised so long ago finally fulfilled here. Now, it states it several different ways. It's repeating things. It's giving description of it. So, the land that was sworn to give their ancestors and took possession and settled it. The Lord gave them rest on every side as he had sworn to their ancestors. Not one of their enemies withstood them. The Lord gave all their enemies into their hands. Not one of all the Lord's good promises to Israel failed. Every one was fulfilled. So it's taking time to make sure that the promises are understood, the land possession is understood, the defeat of enemies is understood. All of those are seen in totality to have been fulfilled. One of the things that we've seen as we've gone along is that when it makes descriptions of this in one place, at other places it will say, yeah, but, and however. So that is one of the things that people might point to, or you might hear people say, well, when we look at Israel, all these promises weren't fulfilled. They never actually took possession of the whole land. Well, then what do you do with this section here that says it was fulfilled? And the reason I point that out is they're making a claim it still has to be fulfilled. And I'm saying here the passage tells us it was fulfilled, even if from our standpoint, all didn't mean all, literally, you know, well, then what does that mean? Was it fulfilled? Here it says fulfilled. And so that's why I just wanted to point out, when you hear people talk about things like that, there still has to be, well, it doesn't have to. Here it said it was fulfilled, and that's in Scripture telling us it was fulfilled. So, all right, let's keep going. Then Joshua summoned the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, and said to them, you have done all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded, and you have obeyed me in everything I commanded. For a long time now, to this very day, you have not deserted your fellow Israelites, but have carried out the mission the Lord your God gave you. Now that the Lord your God has given them rest as he promised, return to your homes in the land that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan. But be very careful to keep the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you, to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience with him, to keep his commandments, to hold fast to him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. Oh, that should sound familiar. Maybe this isn't the phrasing that we are familiar with, but to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. Those would be things we might be familiar with. Why are these three summoned out? If you weren't with us, so it's half of Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben. Those are the ones on the east side of the Jordan. When Moses was still alive, because he wasn't able to cross the Jordan, they conquered these lands on the east side, and these tribes said, yeah, I know we're supposed to go on the other side of the river and get stuff. We're cool with just sticking out here. If you'll give us this, we'll be happy. And Moses said, you can stay here. However, when we cross the Jordan, your soldiers still need to go in, and they still need to do their part in taking care of what needs to happen. So here, Joshua is now saying, it is time for you to be able to return home. You've fulfilled the promise to Moses, and you've listened to all that I've commanded you to follow those orders to do things. So now, as they're going, he gives them a reminder of the law that they should follow it. Then Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their homes. To the half-tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given land in Bashan, and to the other half of the tribe, Joshua gave land on the west side of the Jordan, along with their fellow Israelites. When Joshua sent them home, he blessed them, saying, return to your homes with your great wealth, with large herds of livestock, with silver, gold, bronze, and iron, and a great quantity of clothing, and divide the plunder from your enemies with your fellow Israelites. So Reuben, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh left the Israelites at Shiloh in Canaan and returned to Gilead, their own land, which they had acquired in accordance with the command of the Lord through Moses. When they came to Gililoth, near the Jordan, in the land of Canaan, the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh built an imposing altar there by the Jordan. And when the Israelites heard that they had built the altar on the border of Canaan at Gililoth, near the Jordan, on the Israelite side, the whole assembly of Israel gathered at Shiloh to go to war against them. So they build an altar, an imposing altar. That's interesting. So the Israelites sent Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, to the land of Gilead, to Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. With him they sent 10 of the chief men, one from each of the tribes of Israel, each the head of a family division among the Israelite clans. When they went to Gilead, to Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, they said to them, "The whole assembly of the Lord says, how can you break faith with the God of Israel like this? How can you turn away from the Lord and build yourself an altar in rebellion against him now? Was not the sin of Peor enough for us? Up to this very day, we have not cleansed ourselves from that sin, even though a plague fell on the community of the Lord. And are you now turning away from the Lord? If you rebel against the Lord today, tomorrow he will be angry with the whole community of Israel. In the land you possess, if the land you possesses is defiled, come over to the Lord's land where the Lord's tabernacle stands and share the land with us. But do not rebel against the Lord or against us by building an altar for yourselves other than the altar of the Lord our God." When Achan, son of Zerah, was unfaithful in regard to the devoted things, did not the wrath come on the whole community of Israel? He was not the only one who died for his sins. Okay, I'm going to pause there before we get into the reply. If you haven't been or you're not familiar with what happens throughout the Old Testament, there is not this Western modern thought of the individual is the only one responsible for the thing of the individual. There is a collective we of the people, that the people take action. And if an individual who is a representative of the people take action, not only does the individual get justice and judgment and punishment, as the case may be, the whole people have that happen for them as well. So we saw that when they were conquering in the land, when Achan took some of the things, hid him in his tent, and then they went to go against Ai, which means heap of ruins. They went to go defeat that heap of ruins city, which is so small and so insignificant, they didn't send the whole party. They just sent a little tiny portion, and they got defeated. Why? Because sin had to be dealt with. And so here they have this memory, and they're stating several cases of when this has happened, saying, how can you do this to us? We've just got the land, and you're going to go and sin. Why are you doing this? This is awful. If your land on the other side of the Jordan's not good enough for you, take part of ours. We'd rather give away part of our land than have sin in the camp. So this is a great statement of faith on their behalf. There's a great piece of trying to have restoration with people, which I think is what you're supposed to do when someone sins, is strive for restoration and healing. Restoration of their relationship with God and healing of relationship with him and others around. So they're trying to strive for that. I think that's a great thing. Now let's see what their reply is. Maybe we'll find out what their intentions were for building this altar. So, then Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh replied to the heads of the clans of Israel, "The mighty one, God the Lord, the mighty one, God the Lord, he knows, and let Israel know. If this has been in rebellion or disobedience to the Lord, do not spare us this day. If we have built our own altar to turn away from the Lord and to offer burnt offerings and grain offerings, or to sacrifice fellowship offerings on it, may the Lord himself call us to account. No, we did it for fear that someday your descendants might say to ours, what have you to do with the Lord, the God of Israel? The Lord has made the Jordan a boundary between us and you Reubenites and Gadites. You have no share in the Lord, so your descendants might cause ours to stop fearing the Lord. That is why we said, let us get ready and build an altar, but not for burnt offerings or sacrifices. On the contrary, it is to be a witness between us and you and to the generations that follow, that we will worship the Lord in his sanctuary with our burnt offerings, sacrifices, and fellowship offerings. Then in the future, your descendants will not be able to say to ours, you have no share in the Lord. And we said, if they ever say to us or to our descendants, we will answer, look at the replica of the Lord's altar, which our ancestors built, not for burnt offerings and sacrifices, but as a witness between us and you. Far be it from us to rebel against the Lord and to turn away from him today by building an altar for burnt offerings, grain offerings, and sacrifices other than the altar of the Lord our God that stands before his tabernacle. Hey, Shaggington, good to have you in here. Yeah, we're just reading through Joshua. We're going to finish that up today. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I'm going to see what Phineas... You know what? Here's one of the things. I've read through the Bible several times. I've translated lots of it. I don't remember this story whatsoever. And so this is fascinating. So I can't predict and go, oh, was this a good thing? Was it a bad thing? I did have the feeling, oh, they're going to explain why they had this. So I want to see what the reaction is. But yeah, this is, well, if we go back, in some ways, could be seen as a response. When they came into the land, they built an Ebenezer. If you remember, they crossed the Jordan, and what they were supposed to do was the head of every clan was supposed to get a rock out of the Jordan, and then they piled it up when they got out of the Jordan, so that when their ancestors, their children, their descendants said, why is that Ebenezer? That's the name for devoted to God. And you'd build an Ebenezer of taking rocks, piling them on top of each other, and you'd look at it and go, what's that Ebenezer for? Well, that Ebenezer represents this. So this is expounding that in a greater way. They're building an altar as an Ebenezer to point to the altar in Jerusalem, where the temple is going to be, where the tabernacle is currently. They're doing all of these things and saying, that's where we have to worship. You have to, in the future, let our descendants worship there. That's their intent. I can see this going awry in some regards, but their intent, their motivation comes from a wanting to follow God, as opposed to what the perception was. Hey, it looks like you're trying to rebel against God and sin, and we want to correct that. And they're going, no, we wanted a response from you, but here's what we wanted. So, yeah, that's where the raise my Ebenezer comes from, the fount. Yeah, come thou fount. Exactly. It's raising an Ebenezer. Ebenezer means stone of help. And so thus far the Lord has helped me. I will raise my Ebenezer. I pile up stones together as a monument to what God has done. You always wondered about that. Oh, I love that song. I love the Ebenezer in it. I love telling people what Ebenezer really means because it totally changes the meaning of things. I think I got into this as a kid, I love 4-syllable words when I'm singing. Ebenezer. Just to me, that's fun as opposed to single-syllable words. Ebenezer's fun to sing. So I loved it. So I would go look up all these words, and I got older, and they went, well, we don't know what Ebenezer means. Let's change the words of the song. And I'm like, no, put a footnote. Explain it to people. So, sorry, I'm going to get on a sidetrack on that. Let's get back to our text. Okay, so they explain their motivation. Now let's see the response. When Phineas the priest and the leaders of the community, the heads of the clans of the Israelites, heard what Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh had to say, they were pleased. Well, I hope so. That wasn't rebellion. And Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, said to Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, today we know that the Lord is with us, because you have not been unfaithful to the Lord in this matter. Now you have rescued the Israelites from the Lord's hand. Then Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, and the leaders returned to Canaan from their meeting with the Reubenites, Gadites in Gilead, and reported to the Israelites. They were glad to hear the report and praised God. And they talked no more about going to war against them to devastate the country where the Reubenites and the Gadites lived. And the Reubenites and the Gadites gave the altar a name, a witness between us that the Lord is God. I'm going to go switch over just for a minute and see if that has a Hebrew name. So back, okay, 34. What was it, 34? I'm in 22. Okay. Next chapter. Called the altar Ed. Ed. So Ed's the name of it. That's kind of cool. So that's where you get different translations. So I didn't have to look it up in the Hebrew. It had it there for me. So, yeah, I find word meanings fascinating, what they mean. I actually had this happen to me last week. I went in to see my insurance agent. His son happened to be in the office with him. He introduced his son, whose name is Corbin. I love the name Corbin. If you don't know what Corbin means, it means devoted to God. It also, there's nuances depending how you translate it. A blessing from God, then returned and devoted back to God. So there's nuance there. But I asked him if he knew what his name meant, and he said no. So we got into a conversation, me and his dad, about what his name meant, and that was kind of cool. So let's see. Let's finish Joshua. We got a little bit more to go. After a long time had passed, and the Lord had given Israel rest from all their enemies around them, Joshua, by then a very old man, summoned all Israel, their elders, leaders, judges, and officials, and said to them, oh, Corbin is a great name, yeah. Talked with a guy named Corbin once. I love talking to people with biblical names. So he summoned them all, and he said, I am very old. You yourselves have seen everything that the Lord your God has done to all these nations for your sake. It was the Lord your God who fought for you. Remember how I have allotted as an inheritance for your tribes all the land, the nations that remain. The nations I conquered between the Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea in the west. The Lord your God himself will push them out for your sake. He will drive them out before you, and you will take possession of their land as the Lord God has promised. Okay, so he's just stated something. This is why I was pointing this out earlier. It said earlier that all of the land was conquered. Now he's saying, remember how this was had, and the nations I conquered, and now there's some that, well, they still need to get pushed out. Be very strong. Be careful to obey all that is written in the book of the law of Moses without turning aside to the right or to the left. I've always thought that was an interesting phrase. Don't turn away to the right and don't turn away to the left. Just stay straight, go forward, stay on the path. Interesting. So don't stray off. Do not associate with these nations that remain among you. Okay, so if you weren't here at times, they did allow for some to remain in. They made treaties, or they conquered them and they remained in. They didn't always kill everybody. Do not invoke the names of their gods or swear by them. You must not serve them or bow down to them, but you are to hold fast to the Lord your God as you have until now. The Lord has driven out before you great and powerful nations. To this day, no one has been able to withstand you. One of you routs 1,000 because the Lord your God fights for you just as he promised. So be careful to love the Lord your God. But if you turn away and you ally yourself with the survivors of these nations that remain among you, and if you intermarry with them and associate with them, then you may be sure that the Lord your God will no longer drive out these nations before you. Instead, they will become snares and traps for you, whips on your backs and thorns in your eyes until you perish from this good land which the Lord your God has given you. So a bit of foreshadowing here, because that's exactly what happens. They begin intermarrying and associating, and they start worshiping, and they do all those things. So, yeah, he is warning them, and that's what ends up happening. Now, I am about to go the way of all the earth. Isn't that a neat way to say I'm going to die? I'm about to go the way of all the earth. I'm going to turn to dust and ashes here, people. You know with all your heart and soul that not one of all the good promises the Lord your God gave you has failed. Every promise has been fulfilled. Not one has failed. So even though he's just said there's some people in the land, he's saying all the promises are fulfilled. I just want to point that out again. But just as all the good things the Lord your God has promised you have come to you, so he will bring on you all the evil things he has threatened, until the Lord your God has destroyed you from the good land he has given you. If you violate the covenant of the Lord your God, which he commanded you, and go and serve other gods and bow down to them, the Lord's anger will burn against you, and you will quickly perish from the good land he has given you. Then Joshua assembled all the tribes of Israel at Shechem. He summoned the elders, leaders, judges, and officials of Israel, and they presented themselves before God. It's interesting. We haven't really spent time talking about that. They're presenting themselves before God. There is a whole process of being made right and cleansed to be able to present yourself. Oh, so this reminds you of Job shagging 10 good. We'll be reading in Job, so I like that connection. Let's see. And the Lord said unto Satan, from whence comest thou? And the Satan, if you haven't been there, it's a title of position, not a personal name. So, thus Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down. And okay, yeah. So yeah, a description looking at where have you come and where have you gone, and so yeah, the warning and the judgment and the perceiving of what's going to happen. You won't escape God's being able to see what's going on. So okay. So Joshua says to all the people. So notice there's the assembly, and they present themselves before God, and then he says this. So this is what the Lord, God of Israel, says. Long ago, your ancestors, including Terah, the father of Abraham, and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates River and worshipped other gods. But I took your father Abraham from the land beyond the Euphrates and led him throughout Canaan and gave him many descendants. I gave him Isaac. And to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. I assigned the hill country in Seir to Esau, but Jacob and his family went down to Egypt. Then I sent Moses and Aaron, and I afflicted the Egyptians by what I did there, and I brought you out. When I brought your people out of Egypt, you came to the sea, and the Egyptians pursued them with the chariots and the horsemen as far as the Red Sea. They cried out to the Lord for help. He put darkness between you and the Egyptians. He brought the sea over them and covered them. You saw with your own eyes what I did to the Egyptians. Then you lived in the wilderness for a long time. I brought you to the land of the Amorites who lived east of the Jordan. They fought against you, but I gave them into your hands. I destroyed them before you, and you took possession of their land. When Balak, son of Zippor, and king of Moab prepared to fight against Israel, he sent for Balaam, son of Beor, to put a curse on you. But I would not listen to Balaam. So he blessed you again and again, and I delivered you out of his hand. If you're not familiar with Balaam, Balaam is the one with the donkey that talks. We didn't read that, but we'll go back at some point and read that. Then you crossed the Jordan and came to Jericho. The citizens of Jericho fought against you, as did also the Amorites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hittites, Girgashites, Hivites, and Jebusites. But I gave them into your hand. I sent the hornet ahead of you, which drove them out before you. Also, the 2 Amorite kings. You did not do it with your own sword and bow. So I gave you a land on which you did not toil, and cities which you did not build, and you live in them, and you eat from the vineyards and the olive groves that you did not plant. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Then the people answered, Far be it from us to forsake the Lord to serve other gods. It was the Lord our God himself who brought us and our parents out of Egypt from the land of slavery and performed those great signs before our eyes. He protected us on our entire journey and among all the nations through which we traveled. And the Lord drove out before us all the nations, including the Amorites, who lived in the land. We too will serve the Lord because he is our God. Joshua said to the people, You are not able to serve the Lord. He is a holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive your rebellion and your sins. If you forsake the Lord, and serve foreign gods, he will turn and bring disaster on you and make an end of you after he has been good to you. But the people said to Joshua, No, we will serve the Lord. Then Joshua said, You are witnesses against yourself that you have chosen to serve the Lord. Yes, we are witnesses, they replied. Now then, Joshua said, Throw away the foreign gods that are among you and yield your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel. The people said to Joshua, We will serve the Lord our God and obey him. On that day, Joshua made a covenant for the people, and there at Shechem, he reaffirmed from them decrees and laws. And Joshua recorded these things in the book of the law of God. Then he took a large stone, Ebenezer, and set it up there under the oak near the holy place of the Lord. See, he said to all the people, this stone will be a witness against you. It has heard all the words the Lord has said to us. It will be a witness against you if you are untrue to your God. Then Joshua dismissed the people, each to their own inheritance. Okay, I want to read through that whole thing at once. I know it might have been a little bit long in there, but I wanted the whole picture. So we probably are familiar with the "As for me and my house, I'll serve the Lord." That wasn't just Joshua talking about his house. He's ready to die. He's gathering the people because he's going to die. And he's warning them about the future. And he is inviting them to make vows and promises of what they will do and how they will do it. So there's this whole big long piece. And he warns them. He says, yeah, you can't do it. Like, we can do it. We can do it. We'd absolutely do. We're going to 100% do this. He's like, okay then. I've got a witness. Now, here's the thing that we haven't got to in the Psalms, but I'm guessing we might pretty quickly, is where we have the personification of the trees of the fields will clap their hands, and we've got Jesus who will talk about the very stones will cry out. That's in Psalms 2, the stones crying out. So this stone is a witness. Why would you want a stone as a witness? Is the stone going to get destroyed in any way? No. That stone is a stone. Unless it's used for something else, it's going to remain a stone. Yes, it could get weathered over centuries. That stone might lose fractions of an inch. It's still going to be a stone as a witness. It says, this stone heard everything you said. This stone heard everything you said, and it's going to remember all these promises you've made. This stone is a witness against you. Yeah, I know I had you declare to be a witness against you. That's each other. But this stone is a witness against all of you. And so he records all this in the book. Seeing if there was anything else I wanted to add in there. Oh, yeah. You are not able to serve him. He's a holy God. He's a jealous God. Phrases that we see elsewhere used of God. But there's this whole recanting of everything. So he wants them to remember everything that happened before they make the promises to do that. Okay, Shaggington. Yeah, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Yeah, that's just it. You can't serve God and foreign gods. You're going to pick one of these. I'm warning you, if you want to stay in the land and you didn't do anything to earn it, it was a free gift of God. He brought you. It was a promise. He gave to Abraham. He's fulfilled it. You've seen the fulfillment. You want to keep it? You want your descendants to keep it? Serve God. That's it. Nothing more. You did nothing to earn it. You do nothing to keep it. You just serve God. Yeah, that's grace. I was hoping someone would pick up on that. Yeah, this is grace in the Old Testament. People think that the Old Testament is about an angry God. No, it's about a God who loves. And so he's blessing people, and through these people, all the earth is supposed to come to blessing. That's God's grace. So, well, we're almost finished. Just a few more verses, and we'll finish Joshua. So let's go ahead and finish that up. After these things, Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. And they buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnath Serah in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gaash. Israel served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him and who had experienced everything the Lord had done for Israel. And Joseph's bones, which the Israelites had brought up from Egypt, were buried at Shechem, in the tract of land that Jacob bought for 100 pieces of silver from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. This became the inheritance of Joseph's descendants. And Eleazar, son of Aaron, died, and he was buried at Gibeah, which had been allotted to his son Phinehas in the hill country of Ephraim. And there we go. We've finished Joshua. So, and if you're not familiar with the Joseph's bones story, and we haven't got to Joseph in Genesis yet, so it'll be a little ways before we get there. But Joseph is the right-hand man to Pharaoh, governor, prime minister, however you want to think about that. He rules over, and so all of his family comes there. So they go down to Egypt. They become slaves. But before then, Joseph makes them promise that his bones will be buried in the land of his ancestors, because he doesn't ever return. He never gets to go back there. So he longs for being there. He wants the promises as fulfilled. So they promise to carry his bones out when they go out. So think about this. They have to hold on to his bones, know where his bones are, keep them safe for 400 years in slavery, then bring them out, then wander around in the desert for 40 years, now wander around for several more years Let's see if my math is good. So Joshua is 40 when they start wandering in the land for 40 years. That'd make him 80. He's 110. That's 30 more years. So 470 years, roughly. They're carrying this box around. They finally bury it. They fulfill the promise they made to Joseph. So just a little thing here at the end to show the people's faithfulness at this time. So there we go. We have finished Joshua, and